Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Buff Naggle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Buff Naggle the podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life. I'm Zach, and we got a great show today. We're talking about approaches to learning in the digital ages and changes we can do as teachers and students and everyone else in between. However, I can't do this alone because I'm not really an education expert. So I brought in a guy who's done a lot more educating than I have. So, Rafe, how are you doing today?
Hey, Zach, I am phenomenal. I think the word we were looking for is a word I don't think I can pronounce. It's something like pedagogy. Have you ever heard that word?
I'm not the way you missaid it.
Well, we'll have to look that up. Okay, that's a challenge. Anybody who wants to come on the podcast and teach us how to say pedagogical or pedagogy or pedagogy, whatever that word is, study of learning, that's what we're going to do. Hey, but before we get started, I want to thank everybody for showing up. All right. Our listeners are the heartbeat of this little podcast, and we are nothing without you guys. So thank you very, very much. Thanks to you guys. We are a top 10% global podcast, and we are appreciative every day of that honor that you have bestowed upon us. As usual, you can reach us at buffnagel@buffnagel.com. We are on Twitter and Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. We probably even they pipe us in at the local deli, Zach, and no, they don't really do that. Okay, but hey, if there's a podcast place we need to be on, let us know and we will figure out how to get there. If you are new to our podcast, welcome. Thank you for coming. Thanks for giving us a shot. We're going to ask you, please give us 4 episodes, and I'll bet in those 4 episodes we'll give you a reason to come back. You'll get to know us, get to know what we're talking about, and you'll be right in there with the team. So, and remember, tell a friend to listen, get them to subscribe, and you will get a free episode. It reminds me, hit the subscribe button. It's good for you. It's good for us. It's good for mankind. So
And it's good for your wallet because it's free.
it is free. You have the app on your phone. Hit the subscribe button, and if you can get to the Apple podcast thing. If you go on that one, give us a 5-star review. That really helps us a lot. And if you can say something nice about us on there, that would be nice too. Zach, that is the intro. Tell us about pedagogy.
I don't even know what that word is supposed to look like or sound like, so I'm just going to go with approaches to learning in the digital age. We've talked a lot on this podcast before and in conversations we've had because, well, you've had a lot of conversations with me in your lifetime. Fortunately or unfortunately, we'll figure that one out later. But one of the things that we keep coming back to is the over-reliance on technology as the teacher as opposed to the teacher itself. And you have a couple of bullet points. We've had a couple of conversations on how to kind of harmonize digital learning with physical learning to create better students and better teachers in a way.
Yeah. So, okay, as you're talking there, I was listening to that intro and I thought, you know what? Let's look this up. All right. pedagogy. Pedagogy. There's a couple different. I could hit this button and it would tell me how to pronounce it, but it's the art or profession of teaching. It is preparatory training or instruction or the establishment for instructing youth. Okay, it has to do about teaching, so things can be pedagogical, I think is what the word is. And I know our friend Jenny, the teacher, back from episode 34, she will correct me if I did this wrong. Maybe she'll be back on just to chastise me for improper pronunciation. But we talk a lot about pedagogy, and we talk a lot about teaching styles and how things are presented to our youths in school. And you know, Zach, I come to this thing because I spend a lot of time in meetings. All right, I see how information is transmitted between people, and if that's not teaching, if that's not learning, then I don't know what it is. Everything we do is teaching and learning, and we need to get better at it because in the digital age, things are falling apart.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I grew up in the early 2000s, and with that was a lot of PowerPoint learning. but also at the same time, there was a lot of blackboard and whiteboard learning of teachers writing stuff on the board, explaining it out. But as I grew up and I went into high school and college, it almost became that there was this reliance on PowerPoint to be the teacher, and then the teacher themselves was maybe supplementing the material, talking over the material. There was this odd creation where it was difficult to take away what is the information I want to learn and what's important.
Yeah, and the thing that strikes me about the PowerPoint presentation thing, I'm going to rip on PowerPoint a lot, not necessarily because the program is bad or the software is bad, but what it does is it creates a Ed Tufte calls it a cognitive style that for understanding and reading and learning and sharing information that really it is the way it's currently used. It is difficult to think of a way to transmit information that is less effective than the current use of PowerPoint. And I know that's a pretty dramatic statement and that's pretty harsh, but if you were actually trying to obfuscate information, right? If you were trying to cover things up, if you were trying to make it look like you were teaching, but you were trying to avoid actual teaching, PowerPoint is a perfect tool for that. And you can get it to do some really bad things. And the problem is it's really easy to get it to do bad things. And that's where I don't want to rip too bad on the PowerPoint guys, even though I don't like the style of it. I am going to say that you can use it for some wonderful things. I've done a lot of work in PowerPoint. I made posters and in fact, the business cards that we have, Zach, I think I built them in PowerPoint.
I believe that is correct.
Right. So it's a tool, and it's a question of what you do with the tool. And I think what we are doing with the tool is dangerous. So what I want to do is go through some of these things that we see are issues, and I'm sure everybody out there has the issues, and we're going to try to codify them and point out what the real issue is. And then in true Buffnagle style, we're not just going to complain about it. We have some thoughts on how to make things better.
Because we're all about making things better. Because it was good before, and the opposite of good is better. My mom taught me that when I was about 3.
That's
So
right.
the opposite of good is not worse; it's better, for all those people taking notes at home. But one of these things that you talked about, and we both mentioned this with PowerPoint, is with using PowerPoint, and even like our note taking system today, is everything's done in this bullet point, quickly as possible. Use a catchphrase, move on to the next thing type of education and learning. When instead, and I know this from my own personal experience, when I write big, grandiose sentences and paragraphs and almost a storytelling experience, I get more out of that education. And I recently did this with when I did my applied data science certificate, when I did my final project. I wanted to write a paper. I didn't want to do a PowerPoint.
So you had to do this project, right? So you were given, so the coursework was you learned how to do all the math stuff and how to get the computer to do the math stuff, and then you were supposed to take data, and you were supposed to do some grandiose analysis of the data and come to some conclusions or demonstrate that somehow the world is better now that you've lived, right? So, but you were supposed to give a PowerPoint. It's funny. It's called a PowerPoint. You're supposed to give a talk using these materials, and so that's what you did.
Yeah, I did my project, and then at the end of the project, I had this really cool result, and then they told me to put the result into PowerPoint, and I was just like, I want to write a paper
Right.
because I can communicate my ideas and my knowledge a lot better in the paper using the graphs, statistical formulas, whatever other information I used in the programming itself as supplements to explain how I got to my results and what my data actually means.
So your project, of course. I mean, anybody want to guess? Anyone want to venture a guess? All right. The guess is that yes, it was about rugby, and you were trying to, like anybody else, you want to predict outcomes of things that appear random, right? So you want to predict rugby scores of games. Is that what it
Yeah,
was?
it was scores of games and probability of winning, which to some people might sound like the same thing, but for me, it was different. If the score of a game is how many points you put up, if you put up 50 points, another team puts up 60 points, I'm pretty sure your probability of winning is zero. So there was this defensive offensive factor being balanced together. I created a model, and then I used that model to predict the results. And I created in my opinion, a very good model that was able to predict the likelihood of victory as a 0 to 100%. And the closer that percentage was to 50, the closer the game was, hypothetically. And based on my results that I ran against actual results, that was true. But my ability to predict how much a team would score was not very good because there were a bunch of factors that go into determining scores of a rugby game, and I didn't have all that data available to me.
So there's a bunch of stuff that you have to demonstrate when you have what, 10 minutes, right? 10, 12 minutes, something like that. All right. So you have to explain something about rugby. You got to explain something about the data, where you got it, and what it means. You have to explain something about the model. What's the math behind it? What the software was, and how what kind of challenges did those data, and that you had some interesting things, right? You had some missing data, and you had some stuff you had to talk about. Then you had to talk about what the results were from the model that you fit. And then the last thing, any good model, as we know this, we've talked about this before, any good model describes what you've seen and they help predict what you're going to see. And the last thing was checking the prediction. And you predicted the outcomes of the championship tournament for the
Yeah,
English
so I
Premier League or
looked
something.
at the 2019-2022 delayed COVID season of the Premiership in England, which is the highest form of rugby in England. And then I used all of that data to predict the playoffs. So I know the regular season results. I knew the playoff results, but I had my model run what would likely happen in the playoffs, and it lined up fairly closely to what happened in the actual real world, which was really cool to see how all those things came together. But I had to put all of that information into a PowerPoint and present it. And the nice thing was I was able to speak over the PowerPoint and explain some of these things. And I had my mouse and I was circling things and I was pointing things out and I was scrolling back through to other slides to kind of reinforce these ideas. But at the end of the day, that was not my best presentation of what I learned because I was not able to present it in a paper, which I believe would have been a better representation of what I can show I can learn.
Yeah, and so that's the first thing I think a lot of us see when we start doing presentation materials in the PowerPoint cognitive style is what we'd really like. I think in our heart of hearts, we watch TV shows like Nova, all right, and they'll show us like Einstein's gravity well, and they have this 3D plot, and they have like Mars moving through the universe, and I mean, so they have all this really high budget excellent technical graphical capabilities. And meanwhile, in the background, they got James Earl Jones giving the voiceover, so that is done flawlessly. And that's what we aspire to, is that. And what comes out are bulleted lists and us tripping over our words. And it's not quite what we want. So there's a thing that I see in the PowerPoint style that is, this is the first thing to recognize at how bad this is. So instead of getting the harmony and the synergy that you want to get by using audio and video together, you end up getting dissonance and antagonism, right? So what happens is if I'm talking to you right now, and if you are driving in your car and you're trying to read the signs, of where to get the double cheeseburger at Hardee's or whatever it is, that reading text that you're doing is creating a dissonance against what I'm saying. Right now, if it's a picture, if you can imagine, if there were a billboard of me right now, a video billboard of me waving my hands and talking like I'm talking, that would actually produce a synergy. So you could see, like, when my hands go together and they lift up, you could see that would be giving you what you want. But instead, you see something completely different. All right. So the audio coming into your ears and the video coming into your eyes, they need to work together. And if they are both words, then what you're doing is you're creating this disharmony in your brain. All right. If the words are the same on the screen as they are that you're reading, well, then you're just reading slides to somebody. It's good, but one is wasteful compared to the other one. If the words are different on the screen than are coming through the audio channel, you're really creating a problem for your listener, right? Either they have to read what's on the screen and ignore what you're saying, or if they have to listen to what you're saying and ignore what's on the screen. They can't do both, right? So if you're going to make audio and video together, you need to come up with a way so they don't interact, and so they, when they do interact, they interact positively and they don't create that dissonance.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to be in a class learning something at a meeting, having a conversation about something, and the person doing the presentation talks about something, but their bullet points are unrelated to what their talk's about. What you really want is you want that professor standing up in the classroom, having the conversation about whatever it is, and then the definition of the thing is behind it. So we're talking about X. The definition of X is 2 plus 2 square root of 3 minus 57. I don't know. Whatever it is, you can visualize, you can see it, and then you can engage with the professor so you can get that deeper understanding that's beyond the definitional approach. That's where PowerPoint is unparalleled and beautiful, especially in today's age, because if the professor wanted to write out the definition on the whiteboard or the chalkboard, everyone would probably get on their phone because they had 10 seconds to Instagram something. And you got to Instagram something.
Yeah, that's right. So that, and that's an issue, right? So the real value of PowerPoint is you can make it look good, right? I mean, like my penmanship on the chalkboard still leaves some things to be desired, even though I've been doing that for years. And the whiteboard is actually harder to write on than the chalkboard because it's so smooth. You don't get there's no tactile feedback. And on the whiteboard, you can't make dotted lines by bouncing the chalk. I mean, there's all sorts of things out there. But there's a couple things there. The PowerPoint thing makes it great for reproducibility. You can do the same thing over and over and over again, and you can put that thing on the screen. The other thing that the actual PowerPoint program has that no one ever uses is the B button. The letter B, right between V and N on your keyboard, right above the space bar. That will produce a blank screen, a black screen. Right? So when I'm doing my course, I may do what Zach said. The definition of X is this, and I'll read it to them, and we'll point out the appropriate things. And then if I want to give an example, what I'll do is I'll hit B, and the screen goes black. And then it's an amazing thing to see, because if you've ever taught in a large classroom, you've seen all these heads are looking up at the screen. You hit B, and there's this shift, this little cosmic shift that takes place in the classroom, and all the heads immediately look at you because right now you're the most important and the most interesting thing in the room.
So I hope you're the most interesting thing.
Well, it can be a little bit scary, Zach, right? But now all the focus is on you. All right. When you turn off that overhead, all the focus comes on you, and then they are fully engaged in what you're saying. And when you need to go back to it, you hit the little B button and it comes back up. So that's a great way to be able to turn that thing on and turn it off, certainly in a teaching environment. And I'm sure you can do that thing with the Zoom. The Zoom meetings or whatever you're doing in this whole quarantining work from home thing now, it's got to be a little different, I think, than with regard to the distractions that are taking place. I look around right now in my little home studio here. The distractions I have are mind-boggling. And then I'm looking at Zach here on the screen, and I can see his distractions behind him. It's amazing we don't just drift off into nothing.
It's amazing that we get anything done ever.
That is true. So there are ways to do this thing, but what you want to do is you want to make this audio and the video be synergistic. They want to work with each other. And the worst thing you can do is read something different than what's on the slide if they're both words. If the words are so important to put them on the slide, either read them to the audience, which is not preferred, but sometimes it's okay, or make those words be there and then gone so that you can talk about what matters, right? Don't cloud the two income streams.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and with that too is like the idea of bullet points. Like if everything you learn is just a bullet point without that deeper fundamental understanding of what's going on, you're just going to have a surface level conversation about stuff. You're not going to be able to have that deep dive, that fully understanding of whatever the concept is. The bullet point might be great for like the definitional thing, but you also have to underneath when you're taking your notes or whatever else you may be doing, explain things in full sentences and paragraphs. Who's ever teaching needs to do that as well. Again, back to my presentation I did. I wanted to write the paper because I would have been able to explain these things in full sentences and being able to add footnotes or side comments so that I could give the reader who's learning about this stuff, who might not have the same level of rugby education as me, which I assume the reader would not, so that they can be as close to the same page as me so they can see what I'm doing.
Yeah, the note I had written here for that was sound bites versus nuanced content. And we live in a world like once you get past about, I don't know, second or third grade, you start realizing that the world gets complicated and nuanced. And the idea of a soundbite owning somebody on Twitter in 140 characters or 280 characters,
280.
280 now. See, look how behind I am. With 280 characters, I, wh- does it amaze anybody that we can't have active, nuanced, subtle political discourse in an age when the maximum sentence you can put together is 280 characters? I'll bet that sentence I just cranked out was probably at least 400. This is people. This is important. Okay, the future of the republic depends upon this, right? And
Is this
your
how
information.
the Republic dies with thunderous applause?
Is that what it is, or just with a
That's
lightning?
a Star Wars Episode 3 quote from
Is
Padme.
it from Padme? With yeah, that's well. All right. So, do we want nuanced content and rational discussion, or do we want sound bites? I keep saying that in statistics. I say that p-values in politics make us stupid because they take very complicated ideas and reduce them down to binary decisions. All right, and sound bites are just one step up from a binary decision. So stay away from the sound bites, all right, unless you want to put it on a bumper sticker. And let's come up with some nuanced content with sentences and paragraphs.
I mean, that's kind of what we're doing here. We're having that full conversation with full sentences talking about complex ideas and how to better them, whatever it may be. Whatever our conversation of the week ends up being, we go in deeper as opposed to talk about the fluff on the first page and then we end it there. We dive in deeper, we understand things, we explain them. We want that full holistic education and understanding.
Zach, back when we lived in Raleigh, we uh, there I would drive from my office back home, and I would sometimes listen to the local news lady read the news. The local news TV station was simulcast on the radio, and what was very interesting to me is I could listen to the news on the radio, or I could go home and watch the news. But the amount of information I lost by not being able to see what's on the news was essentially zero. I got just as much information out of just listening to the audio that I did by watching the audio, by watching the audio, listening to the video, by watching the video and listening to the audio, which led me to believe that a lot of the information that was being broadcast through the video channel was essentially useless. The only value was when the weather dude came on and said, "Hey, we're getting a thunderstorm and it's raining really hard down here." I wasn't exactly sure where he was pointing, right? But but so much of the information that you are conveying in any sort of presentation, so much of that information is carried in the audio channel. So if you want to improve that, don't do things to get in the way of that. Make sure your video stuff is adequately showing something that's going to create synergy, right? So just remember that you want to create synergy and not antagonism. All right, and make sure your video is actually making things better instead of worse.
Yeah, the video or the supplemental thing is a supplement. It's not the main focus. The main focus should be is the presenter, the person focusing, the guy who wrote the paper, whoever it may be. That's the focus. Everything else around them raises their level of standard up. If the thing around you is a drag, it will bring you down, and then your quality is going to be affected as well.
Yeah, it is interesting that there's this is a podcast. This is all audio, and I know there are video podcasts. And if you guys were watching this now, I there's really there's no value to be added by the video here except for Zach playing with the toys that sit behind him in his little studio there. So most of the information is carried in the audio track. Make sure your audio is good. Now, with regard to printed books, Zach, we talked about this a little bit, and about textbooks and what is seen like in your graduate, your high undergraduate and your graduate level textbooks, how different they are than the junior high school and high school textbooks that I saw you guys carry around as kids.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think the biggest thing is I could compare the history things I read in college, which I can touch on a little bit later, and the history textbooks from high school and middle school. That in middle school and high school, it was a picture of somebody, a snapshot about some, like, there was very little information being conveyed, and the information that was conveyed was done in this quick look and forget about it way. You described it as something.
Yeah, I said so. I looked at these books. So there, I remember it like in the math textbook how I guess how busy the math textbook was for you guys as kids. And I remember saying you would say, "Well, I'm having a problem doing the FOIL method for binomials, or doing completing the square for quadratics, or whatever it was." And I would go. I said, "Well, what's in the textbook?" And you'd be like, I and you would kind of look at me like you didn't want to admit that you hadn't read it. And then I would look at the textbook and I could see why you hadn't read it, because it was not readable. Okay. It would be like I remember this was really vivid to me. It was a picture. It was in a math textbook.
Is this Olivia's book?
I don't remember who it was. Well, Olivia's book was different. There are some in that paper I wrote. I talked about.
Eli references that paper on the occasion.
But
Our friend
but,
Eli.
yeah. So Eli, who did our esports episode, is references the. Okay, so here's what I'm talking about. I wrote. If you want to go look this up, you can go to the interweb and type in fundamental statistical concepts in presenting data, principles for constructing better graphics. And it's a paper I wrote. It's about 100 pages. It's full of text and graphics and principles for making better graphics. And in there, I kind of rip on some of the really bad data presentation stuff I saw when my kids were going through school. But what I want to say here right now is the math book that I saw. I think it was Zach's math book, and I forget what the section was. It might have been on fractions, or how to add fractions or something. It was something silly, and there was a picture of Louis Armstrong blowing a trumpet. And Louis Armstrong was a great trumpet player who played trumpet a long time ago, and he's dead now. But there he was, and he just played
Did the
trumpet.
trumpeting.
He did super trumpeting, and he was a great trumpet player. And what was interesting to me is this picture of Louis Armstrong playing the trumpet filled like half the first page of the first chapter. And the caption said something like, Louis Armstrong was a great trumpet player, and he played trumpet a lot, and he was really good, and there's a lot of math in music. That was it. That was the whole thing. And they wasted all of this space in all of this book, and all these kids are throwing these heavy books in their backpacks and carting them around. And this is a problem, all right? And worse than that, Zach, worse than that, if you looked at the picture, you would see that I thought it was really odd because Louis Armstrong was playing the trumpet with his left hand. And every trumpet player knows that. I mean, I guess there's probably some Jimi Hendrix trumpet player kinds of guys that play it backwards with their left hand. But not only was he playing it with his left hand, but his wedding ring was on his right hand. And then I realized what they had done is somebody somewhere had decided that the picture didn't look right in its real orientation. So what they did is they switched it so that it fit better on the page. And they thought that nobody would notice this. And I keep thinking, like, how dumb do you think we are? All right. Credibility comes with getting the details right. And when you see something like that, all your credibility goes out the window. All right. So avoid the fluff, get to the information, stop fluffing around.
Simple is so much better because you can convey exactly what you want. It okay, cool. It doesn't look sexy, but you know what also doesn't look sexy? Winning a Super Bowl. But you get the ring, so it doesn't matter what you do. Like,
you get more points, you're going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
right?
I'm looking here at one of my college economics textbooks, and we discussed this earlier. And most of it is text, and then there's a couple of figures that supplement the text and explain the problem that they're going through. And it's just no wonder I learned economics in college. It's because I was able to read the textbook, have the understanding, go to class, see the visual understanding, and take notes and go on. Additionally, the summaries and like practice questions they give you are not these fluffy little, hey, do this thing. It's this, they explain what they want you to do, but they don't say, hey, go do this. They make you understand what the terms are so that you're understanding and applying the correct principles and you're doing everything correctly. Like, it's the most boring textbook to ever look at because it's blues and grays, but it does the job. It explains exactly what it needs to be, and everything has a definition.
So,
It
wait,
relates back to something. It's it's very easy on the eyes to look at. Um,
but
very simple.
there's no pictures of Louis Armstrong. There's no
Not
there's
that I
no
know of.
Yeah, and there's not a picture of, like, it's an economics textbook. There's no picture of J.D. Rockefeller in there. I mean, how can you possibly, Zach? How can you possibly learn it without having a picture there?
Well,
Uh,
in the chapter on Monopoly, where you would expect there to be something on Rockefeller, there is not. So, I think it must be a bad textbook.
yeah. Well, see, and I saw that, Zach, in the middle school and high school textbooks that you guys had, and it was like it was the paper version of what I see on the computer screens now with all the apps that are out there. They're just loaded with all sorts of things distracting you from what you're trying to do. This conversation today started off Zach and I trying to get logged into the same thing here, and we were on Discord. And I'm not a big Discord user, and Zach was showing me how to use some Discord stuff. I couldn't find the link he sent because I couldn't manage my way past the interface. Uh, it's a big problem. I have a father who's trying to use his smartphone. He's 80 something years old, and you could say, well, at that point, his life's over. No, you know what? They deserve to have better interfaces. Our students deserve to have better textbooks, and your audience, in whatever you are doing, deserves to have better content and better presentation. All right, you owe it to them, right? Because they are giving you their time, right? And their
Yeah,
time is their life. You owe it to them to get it right.
yeah. The information you display, it matters. If you display that information poorly, regardless of how sexy it is, regardless of how you have the labels do a twirly face double hand spring backflip like there's Simone Biles, cool. But is the information being displayed well? Is the data visualization labeled correctly and is appealing and is understandable to the audience? Like, all of these little conceptual things that might not seem like they matter are probably the biggest things that do matter. I say all the time that 50% of the battle is showing up. The other 50% is doing the little things right. It's the same thing with anything else you do. When you display this information, when you're teaching, when you're providing this information to somebody else who is not as knowledgeable as you need to do it in a way that allows them to get the most out of it. And sometimes the way that you get the most out of something is by keeping it simple, explaining what it is, and being slow and methodical so everybody can understand. This idea of being superior intellectually because you work at the idiot bar at Apple doesn't help anybody because you work at the idiot bar at Apple.
Yeah, there's a thing. Okay, we're going to riff on Apple just a little bit here. The arrogance of a corporation that calls their help desk the Genius Bar. I mean, it's like, did no one stop and say, Zach, do you think that might be a little arrogant if we call ourselves the Genius? That's stunning. That is a stunning thing. All right, now just going back to PowerPoint just a little bit. Um, it can be used, and it can be used successfully. All right, it takes a lot of work. All right, just like anything, don't think that the content wizard is going to make something for you. Okay, your PowerPoint thing can be a map for your discussion. You can have the bullet points up there, you can have the graphics up there, you can show them. But you know what? Use this wisely. Put yourself on the other side of the PowerPoint experience. Right? Put yourself there. Right? And you know what? It's hard. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes time to learn how to do all the things that it can do. Take your time, get the details right, and it can work well. So what are the answers, Zach? We talked about this. We've talked about a lot of problems. We talked about some good things. So these guys who are getting ready, they're pulling into the office parking lot. They want to listen to the last little bits of info and wisdom we might have here. What do we tell them? What do they take home from this episode?
You want to keep things simple, whatever that is. Keep it simple. You want whatever you have as your PowerPoint, as your deck slide, or whatever it is, you want that as a supplemental tool. You are the expert, so your speaking should be the most important thing. You're the most important person in the room, even if you don't believe it yourself, but manifest it and believe in yourself. And keep things, as conversational as possible, because you're having a conversation when you get this presentation. You don't want to just give bullet points about the definition of something is this and act like a robot, and that's boring. No one likes, well, I like robots, but no one wants to be friends with a robot. They want to hang out with real people and do real things.
Right. Okay. So that's the first thing in giving that talk is conversational, simple. Keep it for your audience. Now, the second thing is when you're writing things, write in sentences and paragraphs. Write the narrative. You will do a better job. And you know what? You can even do that with a paper and pencil. Jenny would love that. And you will find that when you write things out in full sentences, when you're doing your preparatory work, instead of writing them out in bullets, you will get a better outcome than if you just, like I said, than just writing them out as bullets. You will think them through fully. So keep it simple, sentences and paragraphs, and the audio and visual should reinforce each other, not interfere with each other.
Yeah, we don't want dissonance because that creates cognitive dissonance, which means our brains are scrambling for stuff. We want to be able to focus, have a greater understanding of things, and then when we're done with the presentation, we can go out, we can go hang out with somebody, and we can have a real conversation about whatever thing we just learned. And that's going to grow society a lot better than these 280 character fist fights that people pull up on the internet.
I got you. And the last thing is, if you really want staying power, don't write your reports in PowerPoint. Write them in Microsoft Word or whatever your appropriate word processor thing is. Put them on paper. Give a summary at the beginning, so in case the CEO has to read it, give the one-page CEO summary, and then get the details afterwards. All right, so write for your audience. They deserve good stuff.
Speaking of that, when you write legal briefs, you have your summary. That's the first thing that's there, and then you detail and you break everything down. No one gives a legal brief through PowerPoint. The reason you don't is you can't convey that level of information and education that you need to when you deal with some of these complex legal issues. There's one thing I learned from law school, so here we go.
That's one of them. All right. So and don't reinforce the ADD mentality of the current apps that we're seeing right now. It is a I really worry about our kids trying to navigate this thing. I got grandkids now, and I'm wondering what they are going to try to experience. It's incredible. It's incredible. We are up against a really heavy technological assault. It can either benefit us or it will break us. So make sure it's the best thing for you and make sure it's the best thing for your audience. They deserve it. You owe it to them to do it right. So
yeah, do the things right to put yourself in a position to be successful. So thank you again all for listening. It's been a great time having this conversation with you, Rafe. So again, everyone go seek the good, be the good, and spread the good. Enjoy the adventure of life.